I'm curious now on your thoughts on Speaker McCarthy. He gets elected. He removes Schiff and Swalwell from the Intelligence Committee, which I agree with. I actually agree with your initial argument on Ilhan Omar that removing her simply because she said things you don't like doesn't seem to make sense. But how did you end up going on? You ended up voting for her removal?
Yeah, I did. I didn't feel good about it, to be honest with you. I believe that had Ilhan Omar not voted to remove Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar from their committees, that she would have found a great deal more support. I think that was ultimately the decision maker, not just for me, but probably for a handful of members, that, if you're going to adopt this terrible paradigm and then you're not willing to live by it, that's actually the swamp. That's actually what we see too often here. And that hypocrisy had to be dealt with in some way. But here's what I know. If the normal rhythm of this place is that every time power changes hands, you got to go nuke some of the loud people on the other side who you don't agree with, it will actually be Lauren Boebert and Anna Paulina Luna and Matt Gaetz who will get nuked next. We have to understand that. And so I hope this ends it. Ultimately, what got me there, look, McCarthy and Hakeem Jeffries both agreed this has to end. And I hope it ends at this standpoint. The Schiff and Swalwell thing is very different because they can be judged based on their acts. They took actions that hurt our country by lying about intelligence. I do not believe that Congresswoman Omar did that. I think she had made comments that upset the various groups of people, and that achieved a critical mass at some point. But sometimes we got to listen to the dissidents, right? Sometimes we have to be thoughtful and introspective and reflective about what people say who don't always align with the traditional dogma of this place.
I also, too, though, think that Representative Perry brought a great perspective, which is ultimately why I voted the way that I did, which was, you have to be careful on the speech aspect, right? Because next cycle, if we don't have the gavel, ultimately they might say that something that we said was offensive and wrong and try to remove us from committees. So to be clear, she's still on committees, but she also did something that is really bad, especially when you're on foreign affairs, and that is that she, all kidding aside, basically had engaged in immigration fraud. And so I think that when people are being looked at for their committees, what they bring to the table, I think that that's an important note. And
yeah, but by what standard, okay? By what standard? Because there were some news articles, we automatically assume that that's the truth? I mean, there were a lot of news articles about me that were false. Right. And so I have a higher standard for due process than that. We have an ethics committee and we have an ethics rule that says that if you bring discredit on the House by your actions, that then you can be expelled from this institution and that we are ultimately the arbiters of our own membership. And so I don't love the fact that we remove somebody without that due process. I do believe that a number of us got Speaker McCarthy to agree that in the future there has to be some ability for people to appeal and have a potential removal examined more thoroughly. But, there were a lot of Republicans who were waving their pom-poms about that vote. I cast the vote. I do believe on committee membership, the speaker deserves deference. But if this becomes a situation where we cancel people in the Congress on committees based on their perspective on certain things that don't align with the traditional dogma, then I'm probably the next one on the chopping block.
So I got a question for both of you. How would you rate Speaker McCarthy's performance thus far?
I would give Speaker McCarthy an A. I would. And he has kept his commitments. He has reaffirmed his commitments. I am eager to get the 14,000 hours of January 6th footage out. And if you had been in some of the depositions I've been in these last few days with FBI officials, getting that information out is critically important. Our weaponization subcommittee has already begun the process of collecting documents and interviewing whistleblowers. And I am deeply concerned about the extent to which that undercover federal officers and confidential informants that were working for the federal government could have animated some of the criminal acuity of that day.
Also, too, for those who are looking and watching this right now, I actually spoke to Speaker McCarthy's office, and he said that if you do have a case and that you feel that footage might actually help your case to prove that you are innocent, that they will actually work to get that footage to you. So to contact your member of Congress, and then they can work to do that. So I think that for people watching, obviously there are many different circumstances, and so people deserve to have the right to defend themselves, and they deserve the right to access to that footage, and they have that now.
Well, just look at today. Today we passed a Thomas Massey bill that carried with it a Lauren Boebert substantive amendment. This is the type of stuff that you would not have seen in a traditional Congress, where the people who have access to the floor and the amendatory process are those who are blessed by the lobbyists. And Speaker McCarthy, to his great credit, was willing to give the power back to the members, and a meritocracy develops as a consequence of that you don't get when it's just about who writes the checks.
So does it feel like, at least for you guys, the people are starting to win back control?
Yeah, I mean, listen, think about just that question from one of the last questions you asked me when I was on your program. You said, Gaetz, how worried are you about retribution? That was your belief, was that the force that we had brought on this place would result in us being punished. And instead, it's our amendments, our bills, our ideas that are driving the discussion. And you know what? We're not going to win them all. We're going to get beat sometimes on the floor on the ideas we present. Like when Marjorie Taylor Greene put an idea up to limit the president's ability to just issue an emergency over everything and everything. That lost. But we're actually willing to take votes on amendments that lose. And I think that brings the American people into the discussion in a far more fruitful way.
What about what's up with that abolishing the IRS?
Well, I believe we should have the fair tax. I believe the American people should be able to choose how much taxes they pay based on their consumption. And if you want to go buy a Lamborghini or some like crazy expensive skateboard that some dude, makes in his garage, then all the better. But then you can pay the taxes on that. And what frustrates us is that oftentimes we're just funding the bureaucracy. It's not even like we're extracting money from the American people to go to their needs. We're extracting it to fund a system that picks winners and losers, and the powerful and the elite and the connected get access to that system.
So let's, I'll give you a hypothetical. If we could, probably very difficult to do, but let's say we were able to isolate specifically bloated bureaucracy spending. If we could take all of that money and apply it to healthcare, government spending that money instead on helping people with healthcare, would you be in favor of that?
Well, I absolutely would, but let's look at the VA, which is something that Anna and I have talked about at great length, not just in the policy space, but as it literally relates to, our families and the people we love. If we abolished the VA and gave every veteran a card that allowed them to get fee-for-service at any healthcare provider that they walked into in this country. And if you want to provide healthcare in this country, you better be willing to provide it to a veteran for the amount that we would pay for it at that rate. Then you could eliminate the bureaucracy and you could spend all the money that is appropriate to that bureaucracy actually on healthcare for veterans.
Yeah, if that was an option today, I guarantee most vets would go that route. And one of the most frustrating things is that, especially during what happened with COVID because of the bureaucracy, a lot of veterans that did need help, especially that had PTSD that needed to talk to doctors, weren't getting the help that they needed.
But if we're going to do universal health care, which is the essence of your question, in exchange for bureaucratic inertia and bureaucratic waste, there's no more fruitful space than the VA and no more meritorious a space.
Yeah, I mean, he nailed it. Again, systems like the VA, and mind you, service members do essentially pay into that. And so that's a friendly reminder to people. A lot of people say, well, the military has socialized healthcare, but we are literally paying back into that system. So for me, from that perspective, I mean, there's so much broken with the VA. President Trump did a lot of good, but there's still so much that needs to be fixed with it. And so anyone that ever advocates for socialized medicine, I'm like, you guys have no idea what you're starting.
Oh yeah. I'm also very glad that this time I get to talk to you. My voice actually works. I was like, thanks for coming.
That's what they said. The magic of the last episode was that you couldn't talk and that Ian was giving us brilliant take after brilliant take. Yes. Serge even got in the action.
Yes. Hey, I want to ask. I'll say this here where you are because I want to ask you and both of you guys really. What do you guys think about like setting up an application or an app or something where people could allocate a portion of their taxes, like a sliding thing where you're like, okay, first of all, it's like I'll say Tinder. Like you swipe right if you like this idea. They want to build a fountain on Main Street, and then you go into your little thing and you can slide. I want to put 3% of my discretionary tax money towards the fountain. And this and that. And then you've got you have to do 10% minimum for the police, 10% for the fire department, 30% for black budget military, because what the heck, But you get some control. You get some control over your where you put your taxes, and then maybe the system can sort itself out.
Yeah, I think that would convert our republic to a direct democracy. right? And that's what you're talking about. You're talking about direct democratic inputs to the appropriations process. And I don't know. It's crowdsourcing the appropriations process. We had look. We're just trying to crowdsource the appropriations process among the elected representatives, and we about had to burn this place to the fucking ground to do it.
They're calling us extortionists, terrorists. I mean, everything in between.
Yeah, but I'd have to think about that.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.